All right, I'll open up with saying Shalom. Of course, I got to start off by giving all praise to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Yahweh who the world ignorantly calls God, and Yahushai who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And, I just got done having a conversation on, what is this channel, the Brojo? You could look them up. Which those dudes over there, usually a bunch of atheists, joking around together. Sometimes they'll bring on, as they call them, theists, right? People who believe in, some type of, deity or deities. So I've been on there a couple of times before, just, to have a quick laugh or two with them, or challenge their beliefs. But there's one dude I ran into, which I've had a discussion with this dude a few months back. This guy's name is Richard. His YouTube channel is called Demolish Doctrine. Look him up. Which I schooled his ass the last time we had a conversation. He got his ass cut to shreds. Right? Just like Apostle Tim would say, I cut him 6 ways deep, just as Tim would say. So I ran into Richard over on the Brojo's channel. Me and him had it like an hour back and forth dialogue together. And he believes some whacked out shit, man. I can't even believe some of the nonsense this dude's on there. Like we had a conversation about what is that? The flood story, right, in Genesis, the 7th chapter, right, about the global flood that that God sent to kill off everybody on the earth except for 8 people and a handful of animals. Well, for one, what he said is that the waters in the Bible, it's not actual like physical water, but he claimed it's like metaphorical to mean people, which there are parts of the Bible where it refers to a multitude of people as with sea or waves. That's true. There are parts of the Bible that refer to when it uses the term water. Like for an example, I'm quoting Revelation the 17th chapter when it says the water that the woman sat upon represent peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So in that context, the water represents people. However, back in Genesis the 7th chapter, the water is clearly talking about like physical water, like sea water. It's not talking about people there. So his argument was, oh, well, it's actually talking about, a mass of people. And the ark, it's not like an actual real boat, but it's actually just represents like the kingdom of heaven. It's like, I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is this dude saying? This is ridiculous. It's like, out of my 8 years of, being in this, as Apostle Gabar would say, right, this thing of ours, out of my 8 years in this thing, I've never heard anybody say that before. I've never heard anybody make that statement. That, the Genesis flood story, it's not actually like a real story that happened, but it's like metaphorical for the water representing masses of people. It's like, damn, that's some bugged out nonsense right there. And the thing that caught me off guard is there was an atheist on there saying, yeah, what he's saying actually makes sense. It's like, wait a second, what the hell? It's like shit, dude, you don't even believe in the Bible. Right? It's like, you're an atheist, right? He's like, yeah. It's like, so wait, you don't even believe in the Bible, but yet here it is, you're going to side with this dude. I mean, it's ridiculous, so it just shows you, man, that, not everybody that, is on YouTube claiming that, they're teaching the Bible. It doesn't mean they're teaching the Bible correct. There's easily, if you go on YouTube, you can find 100,000 people, a couple 100,000 people across the world who have a religious YouTube channel where basically all they do is talk about, a religious book such as maybe the Bible, the Quran, or, Talmud, and, things like that. So out of the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who have, religious-based channel, there's a very small percentage of those people who actually know what they're talking about. That's why, when Mina Shareg, right, T-Mog, when he used to come around our streams, we would joke around about how, really what you got to do with a person, you got to give them like a 3 strike rule. right? 3 strikes and you're out. You got to ask them like 3 basic questions, which really you could ask much more than that, but basically you could word it around 3 questions. If they get all 3 of them wrong, then you know this person's not on the level with what they're saying. They would be very basic questions. You ask somebody, it's like, well, do you know that Jesus Christ is actually a black man? Well, it's like, but Jesus Christ isn't even his name because the letter J came into existence in 1524. And it's like, well, wait a second. Jesus was actually a well, he was a Jew, right? He was a Jew. Um, so his name wouldn't start with J to begin with. And second of all, the letter J did not even exist in his time period when he lived. So people don't even know that Jesus' name is not actually Jesus. People don't even know that. As far as him being a black man, only a very few amount of people know that. You went up to an average, person who claims they believe in the Bible, ask them, well, what does Jesus look like? They'll be like, most of them will say, well, nobody knows what Jesus looks like. It's like, well, we know what he looks like. I mean, what is that? Revelation, what is that, 1? Go to start at 13 on down, right? His head and his hairs, they were white like wool, and his feet were like unto fine brass. What color is fine brass? Fine brass is a blackish color, brown, dark color, after it's been burned. So we know, not only based upon that, but upon, the fact that Christ was a Judite. What is that? Hebrews 7:14, where it's evident that the Lord sprang out of the tribe of Judah. Judites, so-called Negroes. So, based on those factors, we know that Jesus is actually a so-called black man. But people don't know that, so that's strike 1. The second strike would be ask them, what's hell? You find out that these people don't even know. These people don't even know what the hell, no pun intended, but these people don't even know what the hell they believe about hell. You ask these guys, it's like, okay, well, describe hell to me. I'd be surprised if any of them know 1 or 2 verses in the Bible that speak about this place called hell. Like, for an example, a few days ago, I was having a conversation with a Christian, right? And we brought up the topic of hell. So one minute he says, oh, yeah, well, there's, a hell in the Bible where people go and burn. It's like, well, how can you prove that to me exactly? It's like, can you name me like 1 verse to prove that? And he's like, oh, well, I don't know. It's like, wait a second, how the hell do you not know not even 1 verse that you can give about the topic? It's like, come on, man. It's ridiculous. But even these dudes who might give a verse, like some of these guys will bring up, Luke, the 16th chapter, right, about the parable of Lazarus and the rich man. But it's like, you can't use that to prove that there's a hell, because that's a parable. A parable is a story that's not actually true, but it has like a symbolic meaning behind it. Just like how we were taught in school, right? They might have given parables or metaphorical stories that did not actually take place in real life, but it has like a symbolic meaning behind it. Right, so same thing with Lazarus and the rich man, right, in Luke the 16th chapter. It's not an actual real story that happened, right, where there was a rich man who died and went to hell, and then there was Lazarus, who was a poor man, who cried out at his gates, and the rich man didn't give him nothing. So then he died and went to heaven, but the rich man went to hell. And then they were somehow in a place where they could both have a conversation with each other. That's not true. That story in the Bible is what you call a parable. Much of what Christ, Yahushai, much of who people call Christ, which his real name is Yahushai, but much of what he taught in the Bible are parables and metaphorical language. When he spoke that way, so that the masses of the population wouldn't be able to interpret what he's talking about. That's why, I'll give an example. If you go to If you go to Matthew chapter 13, verse 10, the apostles asked Christ, why do you speak in parables to the masses of people? And Christ said, to you it's given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it's not given, right? So it's not given to the masses of people to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, to know the mysteries of this book, man. And a whole nother thing, going back to, the free strikes out, hell, that's the second strike, because most of these people will get that wrong. I mean, shit, me and Maya Shareg would joke around about how it's like, damn, you might have like one person out of 100 people who might, pass on those two that I just mentioned there, who accepts that Christ is black, accepts that hell is actually, not a real place that people go, but rather it's, metaphorical for meaning the world that we're at, right? This is where judgment takes place, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 16. Right, so earth is where judgment takes place. So hell in the Bible, it either means a condition of suffering that takes place on the physical earth that we live on, or it simply means the grave, but it's not a place where people go and are punished, with burning or tortures, because that's a whole nother thing they believe. Like this dude the other day I was talking to, he was mentioning that, depending on what sins you commit, it would determine what level of hell you'd be put in. It's like, sure, well, that's not true. Where in the Bible does it talk about there being different levels of torment and hell? I mean, where is that at in the Bible? You don't find that in there. The place that comes from is something called Dante's Inferno. Look that up on Wikipedia. Right, Dante's Inferno, it's basically what it is. It's like 9 layers of hell. The deeper down you go, the more severe the punishments are. Right, so say for an example, they say that Hitler's on like level 9. Right, but some other people in history that might have killed a few people, but not, on Hitler's level, they might be in a, section 4 out of 9, just as an example. And if you read about Dante's Inferno, there's like different torments that people are going through on each level, right? One might be a pit of fire. The other one might be, other tortures, things like that. There's 9 levels. But that's all fake. That's just a myth to scare people. There's no such thing as different layers of hell, because hell in the doctrine that the church teaches is not true. The Bible doesn't teach it. There's a hell where God sends wicked people to after they die. That's not in the Bible. And again, I was raised with that ideology too, because I, was raised in the Christian church. So I myself, just like everyone else, believe that. Why we believe it? Because that's what we were taught at church. But, there comes a point where you pick up the Bible for yourself and read it, cover to cover. And you come to find out that, a lot of what these churches were teaching clearly is not true. Now, these Christians, well, most of them, are full with, pork chop eaters anyway, which is clearly a sin in the Bible, but they don't teach you that. It's like, shit, you can't have a Catholic get-together, and I speak from experience, because I've been to plenty of them before, but you can't have a Catholic get-together without, somebody bringing, shrimp, crab, and lobster. Right, those are like the delicacies that are on the table, which all of those things I mentioned are sins in the Bible. You're not allowed to consume those, the Bible says. No, but these people don't care. They'll be like, oh, Jesus did away with the law, right? Jesus died on the cross for me, so I can eat this salami sandwich. It's like, no, where does it say that? Where did Jesus say, now that I have died for you upon the cross, go and do whatever you want? That's not in the Bible. Just like, I'll give an example. If you go to, what is that, John 8th chapter, where Christ came across that woman who was found in the act of committing adultery, right? The Jews that found her were going to stone her to death for breaking the law, but Christ showed her compassion, and he, told her, hey, look, this time we'll let you go, but don't do it again. He told her to go and sin no more. He didn't tell her to, we'll let you go and go ahead and, live your life and do what you want. No, he told the woman, go and don't sin anymore. So Christ was clearly telling her, he was giving her instructions to follow the law. And you know what's amazing? I've seen people bring up the same passages I just mentioned And they'll say, well, see, that was Jesus breaking the law in the Old Testament. Right? That was an example of Christ teaching against the law in the Old Testament, because they'll say the Old Testament says, if a woman's found in adultery, she's supposed to be stoned. And yes, the law in the Old Testament does say that. But however, in the example we see in John 8, Christ was simply giving the woman, he was showing her compassion and showing her forgiveness. But he told her to go and don't do it again. Because if they find her doing it again, well, she's going to get punished by the law for the sin that she committed. However, Christ, in that certain scenario, he decided to give her forgiveness, but told her to don't do it again. And people will be like, oh, we'll see, well, Christ broke the law, Christ broke the law. But then you bring up, it's like, okay, well, with the same line of logic, King David, he committed adultery too. He slept with another man's wife. If you read his story, right, he slept with another man's wife and had a child with that woman. But God didn't kill King David for the sin that he committed. He didn't kill David for committing the sin of adultery. He took the life of his son, but he didn't kill David himself, which was, again, the law states that the man and the woman who are committing adultery are supposed to be stoned to death. But God didn't let that happen to King David. He showed God showed him compassion. He showed him forgiveness. He took the life of his son, but he didn't take his life. So my question would be to those people saying that Christ broke the law, well, what about the example I gave with King David? Would you go around and say that God broke the law then? Because God didn't kill King David for committing adultery. And the answer is no, because we find out that the God of the Bible, he has compassion, right? The God of the Bible can show mercy to somebody and not do it to another person. I'll give an example. If you go to, what is that? I want to say Romans chapter 9, verse 15. It says, I'll have compassion on who I'll have compassion, and I'll show mercy to who I'll show mercy to. Right, so the God of the Bible, he can show mercy to whoever he decides to show mercy to. He can show compassion to whoever he decides to do it to. But he might decide to do it to one person, but not do it for another. Why? Because he's God. He can do whatever he wants. Okay, but it shows that the God of the Bible can show compassion and show forgiveness. So these examples that people bring up, such as I mentioned about Christ, they'll say, oh, well, see, he broke the law. It's like, no, not exactly. That's not true, because I just shown you how God, and wait a second, these people out here believe that Jesus Christ is God. So if I show you where God can show compassion and mercy, it's like, well, wait a second, doesn't that close the argument because you people believe that Jesus Christ and God are the same being? And that's a whole different topic. But going back to the strikes, then you ask people the question of, and again, there's like 20 different ones we could pick from. What are UFOs? What is salvation? Who is it for? Where's Babylon at? And many more. Who's the world that Christ died for? Is reincarnation in the Bible? What happens to people when they die? Did Christ do away with the law? Certain questions like this, we can, ask these people, and you find out that they don't have an answer for these. They don't have an answer for these questions. Because all these people are just, hypocrites and just don't know what the hell they're talking about, man. So I just wanted to go on a little rant. I just wanted to, comment on a few of those, points that came to mind. I don't want to make the video too long. But going back to that one dude that I mentioned, 10 minutes ago, man, about this guy. What is this guy? Richard? Right, Richard? It's like, damn, this dude's getting worse and worse every time I, come across this dude, man. But hey, God has him in that state, right? God deceives. What is that? Second Chronicles? Or bear with me a second. Oh, 2 Thessalonians 2:11. 2 Thessalonians 2:11. That the Lord will send them a strong delusion that they believe a lie. and that's another question. Does God deceive? Because these people believe that God doesn't deceive, right? They believe God don't hate anybody. So again, it shows that these people are all in just a delusion and just don't know what the hell they're talking about. But anyway, I'm going to say shalom.